and I put on a cover. So I think the people I had in my life, friendships and romantically, they could see that I wasn't really being genuine. I wasn't being authentic because, one, I didn't know how to be, because I always.
Welcome back, everybody, to Inspiring Beauty and Believers. My name is Song, and today we are going to continue our discussion about parental abandonment from the voices of women. My guest today is Maria Acopia, and she is going to be talking to us about her story and how she has healed from it. Maria, tell us about your childhood.
Hi, Song. Thank you for having me on here. I'm very happy to talk to you about parental abandonment. I am an army whose family immigrated to the U.S. when I was really young. And so I think when we had come to this country, my parents were so focused on survival. They didn't really know English all that well, so they had to learn English. And so anybody that comes from an immigrant family can appreciate the fact that it takes a lot of work to to basically be in a brand new country where you're starting from ground zero. And so I know with my childhood, it was a lot of watching my parents struggle financially, trying to make ends meet, working any job they can in the beginning just to be able to take care of the family. It was me, my brother. So with that, I saw a lot of them, their struggles, their stressors, their just trying to basically take care of a family in a brand new country. So I think with that, when you don't understand what's going on, why your parents are gone, or why they're not fully there with you. Because when you're a kid, you just want to be able to have your parents' attention and have their time, and to be able to have those great moments with them. And so when you're feeling really great about something, and then your parents are tired from work or they're mentally exhausted, then it becomes really difficult to either feel like maybe they don't share the same enthusiasm with you, or just to try to understand, because then you start taking things personally. And I think just childhood overall, it was good, but I think it was a lot of those stressors or those situations and memories that I have that I think created a lot of the I guess issues, which I can get into in a little bit, of those moments and how they ended up making their way into my adult life. So overall, childhood was good, but it was just the fact that my parents were mentally unavailable, emotionally unavailable, I think just because of their own stressors, and they're trying to establish a family unit and be able to provide for us financially. I think that's what made them more unavailable as opposed to abandoned, because they were physically there. I just think emotionally, mentally, their minds were elsewhere. They were just focused on everything that they had to do. So that kind of took away from a lot of the emotional availabilities that my brother and I were looking to have growing up.
I can definitely understand that. I know a lot of us have experienced that, where our parents maybe working one or two or multiple jobs to make ends meet and take care of all of us. And so what they see as showing us love is that they're providing for us. But as children, we don't see it like that, because we just want to spend time with them. So it's very hard for us to equate what they're doing as because they love us, versus you're never home because you're working, or when you are home, you just kind of are zoned out, and so you're not paying attention to me, so now I don't feel like I'm loved. So how did that affect you as you became an adult?
So I think later on, as I became adult, it seemed as if maybe I struggled with self-esteem. I think that was at the forefront of a lot of what I went through, because growing up, when you don't get that attention, the love, or you don't interpret it as your parents are just busy and they're exhausted, and instead you internalize that, I think that took a toll on my self-esteem, because growing up I felt like maybe I had to be an overachiever, or I had to do X, Y, and Z in order to get my parents' attention. I figured, maybe if I got really good grades, and then I, became captain of a certain team at school, or had all these accolades, that would give me that validation or the attention that I was desperately seeking. So I think growing up, that made me overly ambitious, because I think it just as a kid having to do so much and accomplish so much was great. But at the same time, I don't know how much of it was just my genuine interest in doing X, Y, and Z versus me doing it for the recognition or for the attention or me just to feel good about myself in general. So I think with that, it pushed me to become an attorney. I grew up just very ambitious. So I think not really knowing myself, not really having a true identity, I think really made me think that, okay, well, if I accumulate all these different accomplishments or I put myself in a certain status, then I'd feel really great about myself. So I think at that time, I assumed being an attorney would help me feel a lot better or great about myself because I think it's a very prestigious career. It's just something where a lot of people look upon as being a very established position. So I think that's why I pursued it when deep down I really just wanted to be a therapist. I really wanted to work with people in a very heart-centered way, but I think at that time when I didn't really know myself, I didn't really have an identity or feel comfortable even expressing it, I covered that up by just being overly ambitious and thinking this is something I had to do. And I think a part of it was also culturally, you're either a doctor or a lawyer or one of the more accepted professions. So since I wasn't comfortable really being myself, it just made sense that I would take on one of those roles or one of those professions. So that's just one part of it, of how I think it showed up in the career realm. But I think what really took the biggest toll was when it came to relationships. I think when growing up with parents who weren't fully available, it made me also attract partners who also weren't available. So that took on relationships with men that wouldn't commit to me. I was a people pleaser. I loved to be able to uh, help anybody and everybody with all of their issues. I was a fixer as well. I think because when you have parents struggling and you want to be able to take on stuff for them, you want to be able to help them, you want to be able to be there for them, that nurture, that doer. I think that showed up in a lot of the relationships where the men I was attracting wouldn't commit to me, but I just wanted to be there to help them, to fix them, to really give myself too much, and wonder why it was never really turning into a deep, fulfilling relationship. And so I think what I realized was the common denominator was me. And I think it took a lot of the pain, a lot of the frustrations of why am I attracting the same men, same situation, different person. And so I think I hit a point where I said, enough's enough. I can't keep dealing with these relationships that wouldn't get me to the type of love that I wanted. Ultimately, I wanted marriage, I wanted kids, I wanted everything. And so with the men I was with, there was no potential for that. And they kept saying, I love you, but I can't be with you. And so that it hurt to hear that. And so I think after a certain while, I started really looking into self-help. I started really working on myself. And so it took the realization of saying, well, what am I doing? What am I doing that's attracting these same men who all say, I love you, but I can't be with you? And I think I just got tired of being a people pleaser, of doing too much, of bending over backwards and feeling like I wasn't getting anywhere. So I think that came from the fact that that's what I was used to, trying to be able to get that attention, that validation by overdoing and overgiving, and not also knowing myself or not really having any real basis of who I am and what I'm about. And I put on a cover. So I think the people I had in my life, friendships and romantically, they could see that I wasn't really being genuine. I wasn't being authentic because, one, I didn't know how to be, because I always felt like I had to cover that up and be somebody else or be a different version of myself in order to get the attention and the love.
I love that. I think it is so important that you were able to come to that realization in yourself and then begin to work on yourself and not continue blaming the people that you were in a relationship with, even though obviously they had their own issues that they had to work out. But you being able to see yourself and how what role you were playing, makes it easier for you to remove yourself and then work on you, so that you will draw someone else that's going to be more compatible to what it is that you desired in your life. And I think sometimes we have this false perception that because we really want something that we're going to receive that thing that we want, if that is not what's on the inside of us, because we're always going to draw what is on the inside of us. So we have to take that time to work and develop ourselves. So you said that you started doing self-help. What kind of things did you do?
Yes, absolutely. One of the first things that I did was start reading on different topics. I think one of them was on relationships in general, and just trying to understand relationships because I felt like I was a failure at it because I just couldn't get anybody to commit to me. So I was like, well, maybe I have this whole relationship thing all wrong. But even deeper than that, I got into more spirituality. I think one of the books that really called to me was Deepak Chopra's The Spontaneous Fulfillment of Desire. With that, it's a lot of the law of attraction, just kind of understanding things on a more universal spiritual basis. And, I think with that, I kind of opened my eyes up to how I was showing up. And so the way I was showing up and what I've been getting as a result really just opened my eyes. But even deeper than that, I think I just, beyond books, I listened to a lot of audios working with therapists, and some of them were really amazing that I learned about reparenting. I think that was one of the biggest lessons or one of the biggest changes that I experienced was learning about reparenting and the inner child. I know a lot of people talk about that, but with me, I think it actually experiencing that and going through a session of working through reparenting and all of that, I think made the biggest difference. So it was just recognizing the fact that my parents were doing the best that they could. And, like you said, just took the blame away. There was no blaming. There was nothing where you look unfavorably or down on your parents because you ultimately realize they're doing the best they can. And so with that, it's still acknowledging the fact that there still is that child, that inner part of me that really wanted that attention, that really wanted that validation. And so knowing that as an adult, I can give that child that love and attention that I wanted, back when I actually was little. So I think with that, it was really healing because, I cried the tears that I needed to cry for myself and kind of deal with the loss essentially that I felt, maybe a loss of the childhood that I wanted. But then knowing that I have the power now as an adult to be able to give myself all of that. And so doing a lot of sessions around reparenting and inner child work really helped me to connect with myself, to also understand myself and why I was showing up the way I was, and to feel empowered in the sense where I, as an adult now, I have the tools. And so I think that made the biggest difference. And of course, I work with therapists and open myself up to kind of understanding maybe some of the trauma and kind of the inner workings of how my childhood affected me moving forward. So it was a mix between reading books, therapy, learning about all the different ways that you can kind of not necessarily undo the past, but kind of change the narrative,
Right.
and spirituality in general.
Okay. And now you are married and you have a child. Is it just one child or you have more than one?
Yes, 1 6-month-old son.
Awesome. So congratulations. So
Thank you.
all that healing that you did of yourself ultimately brought you what you wanted in life. So that's amazing.
Yes, thank you.
How did you end up being a divorce? So you were a divorce attorney. Are you still a divorce attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm
and
still
you're a
licensed in
divorce
California.
coach.
Exactly.
How'd you end up in there?
So as I explained, I decided to go to law school. And so with that, I was still trying to understand, well, what's a field that I genuinely enjoy? Or what is it about law that I can make it work for me, even though it ultimately wasn't my first choice? And so when I was going through all the different areas of law, it was always family law that spoke the most to me, that resonated with me, because that's the one area where you're dealing with people that are dealing with really strong, intense emotions. They're dealing with such a hardship where their whole family and their dynamics and everything's turning upside down, essentially. And so that's the one area where I felt like I could make the biggest difference with my own I guess, innate skills, my empathy, my with a lot of the coaching that I've been doing. Because I guess to backtrack, before practicing law, I was also a life coach. So a lot of the life coaching skills I felt like could be really useful in the family law arena when you're dealing with people going through such a difficult time and dealing with raw emotions. And so practicing law was the one area where I felt like I could thrive the most in. And it was great. Yeah, I worked with a lot of wonderful clients. But I think what drew me more towards the divorce coaching was what I realized, that there was kind of a bit of a gap in the legal field. So when I was dealing with legal clients, I can advise them on the legal aspects of it and really help them with dividing their assets, kind of unwinding essentially their marriage and dealing with the custody battles. And I just felt like a lot of people needed the emotional support that the law is limited in. If you're billing clients to work with them, but they're coming to you as essentially their therapist. And so as much as of course, my first calling was to be a therapist, so I wanted to really just dabble in that and really be able to work with them on that level. But again, you have to balance, because you're billing them. You don't want to be able to spend too much time, because you need to always bring them back to focus on what's the legal issues here. So I felt like my calling was to do more, and I just felt like in my role, in my position, I was very limited. And so with that, I decided that in addition to practicing law, that I would really, that I would open up a divorce coaching practice to really be able to give those clients more of a holistic approach, where it's more of I can guide you and tell you what to expect with your divorce, with your custody battles, where I can cover all of that with you, but also hold that space on an emotional level to guide you through the emotions as well, the grieving process, the reframing of mindsets, and kind of have more holistic approach. So then that way they're not just dealing with one thing and not the other, because divorce triggers so much where it's just not fair to only focus on one area when there's a lot more that's left unsaid or undone. So I wanted to be that person to hold that space and guide them on the legal aspects as well.
I think that's awesome, especially because if people are able to reframe their mind around the divorce, it's going to help them to really be emotionally stable enough to make sure that their kids are not forgotten about. And a lot of times when people go through that divorce, they're so angry at the person they're divorcing, it takes a toll on the children. And then that whole cycle of the parental abandonment continues to go again.
Yeah. Or even worse, they use their kids in their divorce process. They hold the kids as a bargaining tool, essentially, or have the kids badmouth the kids of the other parent in front of them and create all kinds of conflict, which really has no place in the divorcing process. So as you said, when I work with clients and help them emotionally get to a better place, not only does it make their divorce a lot smoother, but the kids aren't as harmed by it otherwise, had they not worked with the coach and had they not dealt with their emotions. So I think that's one of the main reasons that I was called to it, because it creates a better, more amicable approach, and the children don't have as hard of a time as they would have otherwise.
Exactly. So is there anything that you would share with anyone who may be going through any emotional parental abandonment, that are still dealing with it even though they're adults now?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is just to be easy on yourself. I mean, you're going through a lot. You may not be fully aware of why or what's happening, or maybe you're struggling with emotions, or maybe you just feel unfulfilled and you don't really understand. I think just recognizing that you're in this fragile, vulnerable, transformative state, I think it helps to just take a step back and just acknowledge that you're going through a lot right now, and to be easy on yourself. And with that awareness, I think for the people that are willing to kind of undergo the change and transformation, I'm a advocate of reparenting. I think that's such a great way to try to work through some of those issues. It's not easy. I mean, any change is scary, it's difficult, especially inner work as well. I think that it takes a willing person to be able to kind of work through a lot of the heaviness from childhood. So I think for anybody going through that, being aware, being aware of what you're feeling and that it is something that does require working through, I think is something that would be really beneficial. And again, it's just a matter of whether people are willing to or not. I think when you go through the process of it, you do become a lot more available yourself. I mean, you can understand your emotions better, your self-esteem will be raised, you'll feel better about yourself, and that's coming out of the process, the heaviness of the process. And so I just think it's a great process to go through, and I would recommend anybody struggling through it or feeling like their relationships aren't where they want it to be, or they're not as confident as they'd like to be, to really consider seeking help in that area.
And can you share with the people how they can get in contact with you if they were to need your services?
Absolutely. Right now, I'm focusing a lot more on the divorce coaching aspect of it. And so the best way to find me is on Instagram. The handle is Dignified Divorce Coaching. And my website's currently being constructed. So, but right now, Instagram would probably be the best place to find me. And I'm happy to explain more about what I do and how I can help.
I found her on Instagram. I don't even know how we connected, but I really like her page, so I highly recommend you follow her. She posts great stuff. Even if you're not thinking about getting a divorce, you should follow her.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So I'm so happy that you were able to join us today and to give us your story and just give us some insight to help people who are going through these things, and to help people to understand that even if your parents, you have both parents in the household, sometimes you still may have gone through some abandonment and you still have to deal with that, you know. So we can go through emotional abandonment and not even realize that we are dealing with those, we have those triggers, and we don't understand why, because you have both parents there. So I'm so happy that I was able to have Maria come on today and share her story with us. I thank you all for watching and continuing us with this healing journey. So don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And join us next time where we're going to continue on this conversation. I love you guys. Have a great day.